University.
The best thing about my Duke experience was really the connections that I made when I was there, the lifelong friends, my sorority sisters who are still some of my best friends today. I also feel like whenever you meet someone and you find out that they went to Duke, there's this instant connection between you and the fellow alum. And I think that's just really important and helpful for you as you kind of move through the world as you leave Duke. It's a way that you're kind of always kind of connected to the university and your experience there. My major was public policy studies, and it's an interesting story. When I went to Duke, I thought I was going to, go get my MBA and follow this career solely in business. So I went and decided to major in economics, or that was my plan. I took a couple of classes like statistics and computer science and some of the econ classes, and really felt like, okay, this may not quite be my calling. So I wound up taking, I think it was a double listed class between public policy and economics, and went into the Sanford building and just really enjoyed kind of that class and that community and the fellow students and what their interests were, and really then felt a connection to policy work. So I took one class and I started taking more classes, and I wound up majoring in public policy, minoring in econ still, since there's a lot of classes that, cross-reference between econ and public policy. But I wound up going with public policy. I also double majored in African and African American studies. It was important for me to take those classes to learn more about my history and all those different things. And a lot of those classes were also cross-listed with public policy. So I was able to graduate with degrees in both majors. So right after Duke, I decided to go straight to law school. I went back to my hometown of Philadelphia, which is where I live now, actually. And I went to Temple for law school. While I was in law school, I got a little bit off the track of my policy work and kind of decided to go towards a more traditional legal route in terms of litigation. And first, I clerked for a federal judge in Philadelphia for a year after law school. And then I moved to New York and worked at a firm there for a couple of years, working on commercial litigation and white collar investigations type of work. In terms of what I'm doing now, the gap in between now and the law school was that working at the law firm was that I actually went back into the policy world. So I did the litigation work at the law firm, and then I went to work on a presidential campaign in Chicago in 2008. And coming from that, I moved to DC and worked at the White House in the Justice Department for 8 years. And that was legal work, but also policy driven, and a lot of strategic initiatives, operations, et cetera. So I worked at the Office of Management and Budget at the White House, presidential personnel, and cabinet affairs. And at the Justice Department, I worked for the Deputy Attorney General, and I also worked in the Environment and Natural Resources Division. That was 8 years for 2 terms. And then after that, I went to work at Airbnb, which is a mix of tech and hospitality in policy and also operations roles. And that was out on the West Coast. And then after being at Airbnb for over 5 years, I decided to move back to the East Coast, back to my hometown, also during the pandemic. So it made sense to be closer to home. I left Airbnb and have really been taking time to pursue some of my own personal interests. That includes some real estate investments here in Philly, as well as some consulting. And I've also gotten really involved in the Duke Philly board here, and also the National Duke Black Alumni board, which is also very rewarding work and helps me to stay connected to Duke. I would say, even going back to the best thing about Duke, the people you know and the connections that you make and how you treat people really matter. You should really go through life treating people the way that you want to be treated. I can't tell you how many times I've bumped into someone that I knew from a former career or former life later on, or met someone who had a connection to someone else. And, you always want to make sure that people are saying, positive or at least, productive things about you. It's important to make sure that your professional reputation stays intact and that you are committed to your values. And that's what you represent in your day-to-day life, but also at work and in the workplace. I would say two things. One, be flexible. And as a part of that, take the informed risk. And I'm saying that because a lot of times you think that, especially leaving undergrad, your career is going to be like very much in a straight line and planned to a T. You went to Duke, so you're going to expect like everything's going to be perfect, and it's not. It's going to be ups, downs. You're going to be presented with opportunities that are risky, but you need to realize that this may not be exactly what I was looking for, exactly what I think, but it can get me where I want to go, or this risk is probably worth it. And if it's not, I've done my homework, I've done the research, so I know that, I have backup plans. The easiest way to connect with me is on LinkedIn, Crystal Lynn Brown. If you put in, Airbnb or White House or one of the places that I've worked, I'm sure it'll come up easily.